My friends, as we enter the overall Marian message to the modern world, I want to reiterate what I'd mentioned in our previous lecture, and that is, as much as possible, think of it as one united Marian message to humanity, which again will admit of different emphases, different accentuations, different references to various historical realities taking place during the times of the different apparitions, certainly, but as one unified message of Our Lady trying to get us to live the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ in the fullness of the prayer and sacramental life of the Church. Now, we're going to begin with an anticipatory message, if you will, something that happens some 300 years before the technical beginning of the Age of Mary. To the degree that it's specified, the Age of Mary starts with the miraculous metal apparitions in 1830 and continues into the 21st century, really seeking its climactic moment in the history of Marian apparitions. Some 300 years before 1830, around 1530, in fact 1531, we have the monumental apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's hard, my friends, to overestimate the historical significance of this private revelation in the history of the Catholic Church. This apparition will lead to the largest Catholic continent in the world with Latin America. And over the next 7 years, from 1531 to 1538, some 8 million Indians will become Catholic. At a time when, again, in Europe, Western Europe, we're losing 5 million Catholics to the dimensions of Protestant Reformation / revolt, because it indeed is a rejection, not a reformation from within, but a rejection of key elements of Catholic life and thought which take place in Europe at this time. Now, in terms of background, there is certainly dimensions of oppression that are happening to the Indian people at the time. The first is the reality, and the rather frightful reality, of the Aztec religion. I know it's not politically correct to ever say anything negative about any religion, but the reality is there are some religions that have produced rather grave and even diabolical evil. Canaanite religion, Carthaginian religion, and certainly the Aztec religion would follow with that. It's interesting that one of the major designations of the level of evil is even of society, when you're trying to examine on a positive dimension how sophisticated, how advanced a society is, versus on the other dimension how bankrupt, morally bankrupt and culturally bankrupt. One of the litmus tests is how do they treat their children? And certainly with the Aztec religion, we have a very sad reference that 1 out of every 5 children was sacrificed to the Aztec gods. So, as one historian said, never has Satan so formalized his religious preferences as he does with the Aztec religion, indicated by number 1, the near universal symbol of the Aztec religion, which was the serpent. Number 2, a couple of its diabolical deities. For example, we have the hummingbird wizard, who is designated as the, quote, lover of hearts and drinker of blood. We have also the smoking mirror, another Aztec god, who was called the Lord of the Dark, the god of phantoms and monsters, the demiurge of creation. And again, the principal mode of worship being human sacrifice. At least 50,000 people were sacrificed a year in Aztec ritual. On rare events of particular significance, you had, for example, in 1487, the dedication of the new pyramid temple in the presence of Tlaxcala, the king of the Aztecs. And in 4 days, 80,000 people were slaughtered as a sacrifice to the hummingbird wizard. This documentable evidence conveys that the sacrificial priests would sometimes dislodge the heart within 30 seconds, and the hearts were cascaded in one section of the temple, and then other priests, sacrificial priests, Aztec priests would come and relieve them, keeping up this pace of being able to even kill 80,000 people in a 4-day period with a group of individual sacrificial priests. So you're talking about a grisly dimension of barbarism under the auspices of religion. And certainly this is a cause of severe oppression to the people. Now, another form of oppression, and I'm not trying to imply that it's on an equal level by any means, but some participation by some of the Spanish conquistadors also led to forms of oppression to the Indian people. Slavery, theft, abuse. Now, with that, it must be emphasized that you also had some remarkably good and Christian Spaniards coming and bringing the faith and even bringing protection, a special form of protection to the Indian people. For example, Bishop Zumarraga, the first bishop of Mexico City, was designated by Emperor Charles V as the protector of the Indians, the guardian of the Indians, because of his exceptional love and devotion to the Indian people. Still, there was some degree of oppression. So the historical point is it's not unusual that where there is severe oppression, Our Lady comes to the oppressed people, and she comes with a message of hope. We saw this in cases more recent with Rwanda, and we'll talk about other examples as well, where before or amidst a great tragedy, Our Lady comes to the children in gravest need. Now, on December 9th of 1531, we have the first apparition of four apparitions, the four principal apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's interesting to note that at this time, with the Franciscans, who were the priests and the religious order over in Mexico City, this was part of a 3-day celebration of the Immaculate Conception. And this draws some interesting contemporary commentary on the title. Why is it designated Our Lady of Guadalupe? Well, Guadalupe is a shrine to Our Lady back in Spain. But why here in the New World would it receive that title? Well, some have speculated that in fact the Bishop Zumarraga, who did not know the Nahuatl dialect well, heard a certain expression, in fact in the Nahuatl, something close to Guadalupe, and it reminded him of Guadalupe back in Spain. But in fact, Guadalupe in the dialect, and I'm probably using a dialect of the dialect in my pronunciation, but something close to Guadalupe, really in Nahuatl signifies she who crushes the stone serpent. She who crushes the stone serpent. Now this would be very apropos of a couple things. First of all, of the fact this is happening during the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which was typically celebrated at that time by the Franciscans from the 8th to the 10th of December. Also, in light of the fact that Our Lady is coming to crush a stone oppressive civilization, which was Aztec religion and the corresponding culture. Not entirely, but to a very significant and to a serious degree. So she's crushing the stone serpent has a great symbolism for Our Lady's appearances here in Mexico City. I want to go through briefly the four apparitions, and then we'll talk about the historic fruits of Guadalupe. On December 9th, Juan Diego is hearing a sound from Tepeyac Hill. He's actually hearing music, and he hears the expression Juanito, Juan Dieguito, these diminutives for this man who is now in his 50s. Incidentally, Juan Diego would have been 13 years old during that 80,000 person massacre of human sacrifice back in 1487. Juan Diego is now a convert of a few years. He typically is on his way to Mass in the morning, which is of several miles distance, and he hears this music. So he goes to Tepeyac, and here is the dialogue, which seems to be recorded during the lifetime of Juan Diego himself. Our Lady, quote, "Juanito, my son, where are you going?" Juan Diego responds, "Noble lady, I am on my way to the church in Tlaxcala to hear Mass. Our Lady, know for certain, dearest of my sons, that I am the perfect and perpetual Virgin Mary, Mother of the true God, through whom everything lives, the Lord of all things, who is master of heaven and earth. I ardently desire that a teocalli, or temple, be built here for me, where I will show and offer all my love, my compassion, my help, and my protection to the people. I am your merciful mother, the mother of all who live united in this land and of all mankind, of all those who love me, of those who cry to me, of those who have confidence in me. Here I will hear their weeping and their sorrows, and will remedy and alleviate their sufferings, necessities, and misfortunes. Therefore, in order to realize my intentions, go to the house of the Bishop of Mexico City and tell him that I sent you and that it is my desire to have a teocalli built here. Tell him all that you have seen and heard. Be assured that I shall be very grateful and will reward you for doing diligently what I have asked of you. Now that you have heard my words, my son, go and do everything as best you can. So we have from this first apparition some beautiful revelation from Our Lady. First of all, she comes as the perfect and perpetual Virgin. Can this not attribute to some degree why in Latin American countries Our Lady is so often called La Virgen? Because of this first introduction of Our Lady as the perfect and perpetual Virgin. Secondly, she asks for a teocalli, a temple, place of sacrifice, in fact, a church. This is a typical Marian task of focusing pilgrims, to-be pilgrims, future pilgrims, to the prayer and sacramental life of the church. In this particular case, in Tepeyac Hill, on the hill was a place of idolatrous sacrifice. In fact, evidence seems to indicate that it was a goddess that was receiving sacrifice, the supposed object of this sacrifice. And how appropriate, very much like in Rome, you have Santa Maria sopra Minerva, St. Mary over Minerva, that Our Lady conquers the error by having a church built where the true sacrifice, the sacrifice of the Mass, can take over and correct the falsity of idolatrous sacrifice. At any rate, there is the call to go to the Bishop of Mexico City. The second apparition happens on that evening, Saturday night, December 9th. Juan Diego goes to Bishop Zumarraga. Not surprisingly, the bishop doubts and asks Juan to return at a more convenient time. Juan Diego passes by the mountain of Tepeyac. Our Lady is waiting for him. And these are the words that Our Lady responds to Juan, who says initially, send someone else, send someone with more dignity. This is not going to work, essentially paraphrasing his expressions, it's not going to work with me. And Our Lady responds, quote, listen to me, my dearest son, and understand that I have many servants and messengers whom I could charge with the delivery of my message, but it is altogether necessary that you should be the one to undertake this mission, and that it be through your mediation and assistance that my wish should be accomplished. I urge you to go to the bishop again tomorrow. Tell him in my name and make him fully understand my disposition, that he should undertake the erection of the teocalli for which I ask. And repeat to him that it is I in person, the ever Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, who sends you. So notice not only the personalism, but we could say the co-redemption, that Juan Diego has been chosen to mediate for the mediatrix, who mediates for the mediator. It's a beautiful Catholic and really theological understanding of how God uses what St. Thomas would call secondary causes. He uses the angels, he uses the saints, he even uses us to affect and to bring forward, to accomplish the plan of redemption. Jesus uniquely as the divine Redeemer, Mary as the co-redemptrix, and Juan Diego as a co-redeemer, someone participating freely and cooperating in this mission of which many souls will indeed be saved. Well, the third apparition happens on Sunday evening, December 10th, during that day, during that morning, Juan Diego did return to Bishop Zumarraga, who requested a sign from the lady before he would proceed with the task of building a church, or of course even of an initial acceptance of the authenticity. Well, the fourth apparition takes place not on that Monday, December 11th, but Tuesday, December 12th. It happens that on December 11th, Juan Diego's uncle, Juan Bernardino, becomes gravely ill, and Juan Diego, rather than going to the bishop, goes to fetch the priest for the last rites, a noble task in and of itself. And so that fulfillment of the next day request of Our Lady doesn't take place. Now, Juan Diego on December 12th will go by Tepeyac, but he will go in an extended fashion to avoid the hill out of fear of meeting the lady and of a fear of getting perhaps the rebuke of Our Lady for not doing her task and not doing his, Our Lady's requested task for Juan Diego. And as a result, Our Lady comes down and meets Juan Diego, almost like a good defensive back in football, meets him where the pass is about to take place, as she comes to us where we are, even in the midst of sin or weakness. And this is the exchange. Our Lady will say, and again, reliable quotes from the time of Juan Diego, quote, "Listen and let it penetrate your heart, my dear little son. Do not be troubled or weighed down with grief. Do not fear any illness or vexation, anxiety or pain. Am I not here, who am your mother? Are you not under my shadow and protection? Am I not your fountain of life? Are you not in the folds of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Is there anything else you need? Do not let the illness of your uncle worry you, because he is not going to die of his sickness. At this very moment, he is cured." And we will see later in the official testimonies and the investigation for authenticity that Juan Diego's uncle, Juan Bernardino, not only was miraculously cured, but Our Lady appeared to him in his home, which in itself is now designated by a church, which is not as much typically visited, as most pilgrims of Guadalupe stay right in the sanctuary, but it's a beautiful church and another place of apparition for Our Lady of Guadalupe. Well, then indeed Juan Diego is directed to take the Castilian roses, which are blooming in the middle of a frozen December soil, in itself a miracle. He plucks them. Our Lady arranges them in her beautiful maternal and feminine way so that they're a fine bouquet for the bishop. She ties the tilma, which are containing the roses, and Juan Diego goes and brings what he believes to be the sign for the bishop. When Juan Diego reaches the bishop's office, the tilma is unveiled, is opened, and this supernatural image of Our Lady of Guadalupe is revealed to the bishop and eventually to the world. Now, in the scientific, there's a great body of excellent scientific knowledge available to testify to the absolute miraculous nature of this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Let me mention just a few. First of all, that through the examination of people like Dr. Callahan from the University of Florida back in 1979, it has been ascertained that there are no brushstrokes on the tilma. Well, that leads to one of two conclusions. Number one, there's a 16th century laser printer that did this thing. Or number two, it's miraculous. It's impossible to have produced this back in the 16th century. Further, the material, the fibrous material upon which the tilma is made of and upon which the image lies is only supposed to last between 30 and 50 years maximum. So just the existence of the tilma itself for 400 years is miraculous. Another extraordinary testimony to the supernatural character of the tilma is through the examination of the pupils of the eyes through magnification they can detect within the pupil of each eye images, first 3 prominent images, then a number of secondary images, human images in the background. The 3 prominent images would be Juan Diego, Bishop Zumarraga, and more than likely a translator. They're clear about Juan Diego and Bishop Zumarraga because of the images, the painted images they have of them from the 16th century. They're not sure of the third person, but they think probably it was the interpreter for the bishop who was not as versed in the Nahuatl language again. And then a series of 15 plus people in the background. Now imagine a 16th century forgery trying to do what, again, which would be completely impossible, and that is to microscopically represent these images on the pupil of each eye. And an ophthalmologist even examined the direction of each eye and saying that because the image is not perfectly centered on the eyes, there's more strength from one eye and less strength from another eye in terms of vision quality, which would be typical, but again, something far beyond even the knowledge or the abilities to forge in the 16th century. It's a long series of miracles when it comes to examining the image, the miraculous image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The turquoise has not faded in its essential depiction of Our Lady. Our Lady's many sections of the image reflect as if a topographical map of the region of Mexico, where there are hills and valleys, all indicated on the tilma. Even the winter solstice of 1531, which good records have indicated the formulation of the stellar solstice, is indicated on the tilma. It's absolute. I mean, this is a Pascal case. It's irrational not to believe in miracles, especially when there's absolutely no other explanation for these things. Now, in terms of the pastoral effects, within the next 7 years, again, 8 million leads to the second greatest evangelization in the history of Christianity after the first evangelization by the apostles and the disciples. Again, remember, my friends, it starts with a private revelation of Our Lady. And I want to emphasize this because, again, as we examine a quest for a new evangelization in our time, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's focus on Our Lady. Why? Because where Mary goes, she brings her Son with dignity and power, glory, and proper adoration. This is evidenced. Sometimes people say, well, even on a local level of evangelization, well, where should I kind of bring Mary in? It's kind of awkward. I don't know where to bring her in. Bring her in where the gospel brings her in, at the beginning. And then include her at the critical elements. The incarnation of Jesus and the redemption of Jesus. Jesus' intercession at Cana. But Mary's participation, which leads to the first miracle by Jesus. Mary mediates the mediator once again. So, both for personal evangelization, but also for global evangelization, Guadalupe tells us that where you initiate with the mother, the Son comes with an untold glory, power, and efficacy. Now, Our Lady of Guadalupe is designated as the patroness of the Americas, and more recently the Vatican uses the America, or just America, to unite North and South America as a continent in a type of collegial fashion and an ecclesial fashion. Juan Diego is first beatified and then canonized by St. John Paul II. Our Lady of Guadalupe is also the patroness of the unborn in a powerful way because she's a pregnant Madonna. The tie on the Indian tie is high, which indicates pregnancy. And because of her being a pregnant Madonna, she has been recognized as having special intercession for the cause for the unborn worldwide. I also want to incidentally mention that thousands of testimonies have come into the Archdiocese of Mexico City regarding the hearing by people who are visiting a pilgrim virgin, let alone the original, hearing of heartbeats. And the vast majority of these testimonies have the same theme, that as they approach the Pilgrim Virgin, they hear two heartbeats. One is a louder, slower heartbeat. The other is a softer, more rapid heartbeat, which would indicate the heartbeat of an adult and the heartbeat of an unborn child. There was at one point about 15 years ago where the Cardinal of Mexico City was going to have a sonogram done of the tilma, just because indeed there were so many claims of and references of the unborn Jesus. It was determined not to go forward with that based on the testimony or the discouragement, I should say, of a couple of doctors in Mexico City. But it does bespeak the great number of testimonies to the importance of this role of Our Lady as the patroness of the unborn. So, as this message is conveyed in 1531, it also has a great relevance to our age. She is our merciful mother. She comes to us in the midst of our difficulties, our vexations, our challenges. She brings us the mercy and peace of Jesus Christ. And far more than something simply cultural. Having an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe on the wall is a wonderful thing, but you don't want it to stop there. You want to have Our Lady of Guadalupe in our heart, understanding how she's a special intercessor, a special patroness for America, although it's certainly a global apparition in many, many ways. And it anticipates by 300 years which will then initiate this age of Mary. And in our next lecture, we're going to go to the initiation of the age of Mary, mindful of the precedents that we have with Guadalupe, and also its powerful and sublime continuation with the miraculous medal apparitions in 1830.